Oh shit! I'm gonna go and find a road. If you're in the market for a new bike, then you might be wondering whether your money will be better spent on a road bike like this one, or whether you should listen to all the hype and get a gravel bike instead. Well, over the last few weeks, I've been quizzing the road.cc team about if they were only allowed a one bike garage, whether it would be a road bike or gravel bike that takes that spot. I've also been putting the miles in on both of these almost identically priced bikes to see how big the differences actually are. This is road bike versus gravel bike. Let's go. These days, drop handlebar bikes come in many different forms. There's road race bikes, endurance bikes, all-road bikes, gravel race bikes, and even monster gravel bikes. Obviously, having choice is great, but unsurprisingly, it's made buying a new bike rather bewildering. Today though, we've made things simple. This is a £2,500 carbon road bike, and this is a £2,500 carbon gravel bike. Both come with components that are very typical for their intended use, and both are very competitively priced. But if I had to choose just one of these bikes to ride for the next 5 years, which would it be? Well, hopefully by the end of this video, I will have decided just that. Not so very many years ago, the vast majority of drop bar bikes were designed for riding fast on tarmac. And representing the road bike corner, we have this 2025 Orro Gold Evo. It has a carbon frame, it has Shimano 105 mechanical group set. Like most other road bikes today, it comes with disc brakes, and its geometry is fairly typical of an endurance bike. This then is a very strong choice for anyone wanting to munch miles on the road. Over here though, I have what is perhaps the biggest threat to road cycling since cars were invented. This is a gravel bike, the new 2025 Boardman ADV 9.2 to be exact. It too has a carbon fibre frame. It too has disc brakes. It's got one of those weird 1x rings on the front, and it's got space for up to 42mm tyres. Despite these differences, you can of course use this bike quite happily on the road as well as on the bumpy stuff. In fact, Boardman says that with its neutral 71.5 degree head angle, it delivers predictable handling both on and off-road. Having a gravel bike then could open up a whole host of new routes. But what do you have to compromise for that go anywhere attitude? Let's take a closer look at some of the differences to find out. When you look at these two bikes, some of the differences are really obvious, like the tyre clearance. And then other differences, like the geometry, are a bit harder to tell. You actually have to ride them to be able to notice the difference. So what it basically boils down to, the difference between every road bike and every gravel bike, is 4 things really. Tyre clearance, geometry, weight, and gearing. That's the 4 big ones anyway. So let's go through them and see how they might influence your bike choice. Now, first up, geometry. The road bike is obviously designed for going pretty quickly on paved surfaces. The gravel bike, meanwhile, has all kinds of geometry to stop you going over the handlebars when you're going down a rocky descent. That means that this head tube is quite a bit taller, and that will put you more upright. Also, on this road bike, you get a longer top tube, and that means that you're more stretched out, and that will put you into a more aerodynamic position, and that's why you'll probably be faster on a road bike than on a gravel bike. Other things to consider are the seat tube angles. So it's much steeper on the road bike. That means that your saddle is further over the pedals, and that's good for power transfer. What it's less good for is going over the bars. So this one puts you more over the rear wheel so that you've got more stability on descents. Speaking of stability, the road bike will almost always have a shorter wheelbase, because the gravel bike, it has to get elongated to fit in those wider tyres. That means that the front wheel is further in front of you, and also these chainstays, they're also longer, again to fit in the wider tyres. That does result in a bike that feels less agile, and bike reviewers would kind of tell you that it's less exciting to ride, on the road at least. What it does mean is that it's more stable, and that, for many amateur cyclists and people just getting started, might be a good thing. Another thing that influences geometry is the width of the handlebars. So the road bike will almost always come with skinnier handlebars. There's less width to them. That will make you more aerodynamic. It'll also make a bike feel quicker and more responsive. However, it won't give you the same stability once again. The general rule is that the bigger the obstacle you want your bike to be able to get over, the more tyre volume you're going to need. If you plan on never venturing off of paved roads, then A, you're probably watching the wrong video, and B, you're only going to need around 28 to 32 mil of tyre clearance. If you want to ride on unpaved roads and light gravel, then you'll need around 32 to 40 mil. And if you want to ride on chunkier gravel, then I'd be looking for a bike with space for at least 42 mil tyres. For reference, the Orro that we looked at earlier has space for 30 mil tyres, and the Boardman has space for 42. The only other thing you need to consider is that it's always going to be possible to ride on the road with wider tyres, but riding off-road with skinny tyres, well, it just doesn't end well. Oh shit! If you want to see how much slower gravel bike tyres are on the road, then click the video up there. And if you're enjoying this video so far, then make sure you're subscribed to the road.cc channel. The other positive with this gravel bike is that you get for free an entire novel. You've got what ISO, what regulations it complies to, it's got the height, the size. Our next difference between the two bikes is weight. So as I mentioned earlier, these bikes have almost identical RRPs. In fact, I think this one is just a penny cheaper. Despite that, you'll find that this one weighs, on our scales, 8.7 kilos, and this one weighs 9.2 kilos. So where do you get those differences? Well, firstly, the carbon fibre frame on the gravel bike is likely got slightly thicker tubes because it needs to ward off rock strikes and all that gnarly gravel stuff. Another contributing factor is going to be the wheel set, because gravel wheels often have a higher spoke count and they're quite often wider as well. To be able to cope with the wider tyres, they've got to be put through more abuse. You can have a surprising amount more weight in both the tyres, the sealant and the tubes than on your road wheel set. And the final major difference that you'll find between just about all road and gravel bikes is their gearing. So let's open that can of worms. This Orro has a fairly typical gearing for a road bike with this 2x105 setup. So 2 chainrings at the front and 12 sprockets at the back. The Boardman gravel bike, meanwhile, has just 1 ring at the front and 12 sprockets at the back. Now you might be thinking that this means you have loads less gears on that gravel bike, but actually you usually get more range. The downside is that there's bigger jumps in between the gears. That's fine if you're changing speed a lot, but can make it harder to find a comfortable cadence during steady state efforts. Personally, I find these jumps just fine if I'm riding by myself, when I can dictate my own pace. But if you're riding with others, then you might be forced to ride at a pace that you don't really want to and you can't find the right gear for. In those situations, the closer jumps of a road cassette like this are the clear winner. The exact gearing that you find on a gravel or road bike will vary from bike to bike. But if we take these two as an example, then you can expect to ride up to about 65 kph or just under 40 mile an hour on the road bike before your legs are spinning really quite uncomfortably, and about 55 kph or just over 30 mile an hour on a gravel bike. So what do we think? Well, I posed the question, gravel bike or road bike, to the road.cc team, and this is what they had to say. Matt Page, who writes reviews for both road.cc and off-road.cc, reckons that gravel is the way to go. And he also said that anyone with an off-road riding background would say the same if they had to choose just one bike. George, meanwhile, said that where he lives, he would choose a road bike, as there's far more quiet lanes for road riding than gravel routes nearby. Tony, co-founder of road.cc, also voted for gravel, despite not actually riding much gravel. He reckons that a gravel bike offers a bit more versatility, especially the ones that are at the roadier end of the spectrum. And also pointed out that gravel bikes also make great bikes for commuting. Emily added another vote for gravel, as did Dave, who said he'd choose a quick gravel bike with a spare set of wheels or tyres. I'm not sure that was one of the options, but all right, Dave. It seems then that gravel bikes are a bit more than just an N+1 bike. And when push comes to shove, they really are one bike to rule them all. So after riding both of these bikes, do I agree? Would I also choose the gravel bike? Well, firstly, I think that I'd be actually very happy on either of these two bikes. But if push comes to shove, then yeah, I think it would have to be the gravel bike. Especially if you purchase that extra set of slick tyres, then a gravel bike can absolutely take the place of a road bike. Yes, it will be a tiny bit slower, and yes, the jumps in the gears will at times get annoying on the tarmac, but at the end of the day, although compromised, it is more than up to the task. Put the shoe on the other foot, and the road bike, it's understandably more capable on the road, but you simply can't replace a gravel bike with it. Now you might think, but I don't want to ride any gravel on my new bike. Fine, cool. But my commute, for example, is along a cycle path that just sort of runs out in places. It's not me voluntarily choosing to ride gravel, it's just me trying to get home the flat way on the country's famously crap infrastructure. So how should you decide whether a road bike or a gravel bike is going to be best for you? Well, first, do you ever want to go off-road? If so, then a gravel bike is the only one for you. Secondly, are you interested in your average speed on the road? If yes, then a road bike is undoubtedly going to help you increase that speed. Third, are you going to ride in a group on the road, or do you want to compete against other people? If so, then this is the time where the gravel bike with a set of slicks will come unstuck. And finally, how rough do you want to get? That will determine how much tyre clearance you need. The upside of all these categories, road bikes, all-road bikes, gravel bikes merging, is that there's the perfect bike for you out there. Endurance bikes are getting wider and wider tyre clearances. Gravel bikes come in all types of forms, from racy ones to multi-day adventure ones. And then there's all-road bikes, a whole new genre that sits in the middle. If you want to learn more about them, then click the card popping up now. Let me know whether you think your next bike will be either a road bike or a gravel bike down in the comment section below, as well as whether you agree with our road.cc staff. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like, subscribe to the channel for lots more road bike and gravel bike content, and we'll see you next time.